What's up, everybody? Back again with another video. Last time we talked about the multiple gods between Egypt and India and Greece and Rome. So let's dive into it a little more.
Living were never to forget their obligations to the dead. He also had duties to his clan or extended family outside the house, as well as to the city. But rather than leave the house, let's bring in the rest of the family. The wife and mother of the household had no official duties inside the house that belonged strictly to her, so far as we are informed. Naturally, she would have participated in rites led by the patriarch. Images on gravestones, as well as other monuments, depict women and other family members as participating in sacrifices. Sacrifices, of course, took place outdoors, so we know that women participated in such ceremonies outside the house, just as they would have participated in ceremonies inside the house. The religion women found inside their husbands' homes, however, was not the worship that they had grown up with. Each household had its own ancestral gods, passed down patrilineally from father to son. Daughters worshipped at their father's hearths until the day they were married. After that, a wife worshipped at her husband's hearth. New husbands were generally in their 30s, new wives in their mid-teens. Such marriages would frequently be legal today. But such age disparities.
Did y'all hear what I just heard? The man of the house was in his 30s, and the wife was barely 18. This was, man, I feel like we cherry picking that because America has adopted so many cultural cues from Roman society and then taking out the ones that they don't agree with. Women can have rights as long as it's dictated by a man. Men can sleep with other men and be married at the same time to a woman. All kinds of just nasty, dirty, evil, demonic, just ugh. Anyway, let's carry on.
Would be more in the ancient Mediterranean, and this also had implications for the religious experience of women. The husband was a middle-aged man who continued with his ancestral religion in his original home. The woman, still in her adolescence, must leave her family and her family's gods and become a member of a new family. She does this when she is still young and impressionable. She arrives young, inexperienced, alone, a stranger, so to speak, in an established extended family. Given the age disparity, the bride arrives almost more as a daughter than as a partner, and in fact, marriage placed the bride in a legally dependent role vis-a-vis her husband. One imagines that the transition was not always easy, and a fragment of a tragedy by Sophocles, although he is a male author, gives voice to a plausible female lament in this regard. As soon as we arrive at adolescence and begin to think for ourselves, we are driven from our native gods, the gods of our fathers. Some of us to hospitable men, others to savages. Some to good homes, others to toxic houses. And then, after a single night has joined us, it's necessary to offer our public gratitude and appear as if all is well. One supposes that the bride's youth might at least have allowed her time eventually to recover, to adjust, to become a member of the new family. There was no choice, after all. Marriage was arranged and obligatory, and the state was inclined to punish men who failed to fulfill their obligation to marry by their mid-30s, and girls simply had to obey their fathers. I imagine that there were many fights as well, as perhaps at least some relatively happy marriages. Brides who survived childbirth would also, of course, mature into women. Yes, I did say the ones who survived childbirth. Death in childbirth was frequent and infant mortality was higher. Most children died before the age of 5, and for this reason, to maintain a stable population, women had to bear many children, thus risking death in childbirth, which was a real and fearful danger. Is it surprising in this context that Greek religion promoted sex and fertility? The very purpose of marriage was, in fact, the production of legitimate children, that is, children born to legally married citizens, children whose paternity was certified. Family worship depended on blood descent through the father's line, and many religious and moral conceptions, as well as legal requirements, restricted female behavior to enforce this requirement. Marriage was religious, personal, not civil. It varied in Greece from city to city, as well as over time, but may be outlined generally. An agreement is reached between two families, which includes an agreement on the amount of dowry that the bride's father will provide. Sacrifices are made to the gods of marriage. Artemis and Hera were favorites in this regard. The bride takes a ritual bath in Athens with water from the sacred spring of Callirrhoe. This bath is followed by a feast at the bride's father's house, where she is unveiled before the groom during a rite called the Anakleterium, the uncovering. Guests give gifts to the bride and groom. At nightfall, there is a procession to the groom's house. The bride's mother carries torches, as do others. There is music, and there are shouts of Makaris Moi. They are blessed. Once she has arrived at her husband's home, the bride is welcomed to a ceremony that welcomes new slaves to the mansion. Bride and groom proceed to the family hearth, and they are showered with nuts, dried fruit, and figs. Or more literally in Greek, nuts, dried fruit, and figs
Nuts.
are poured down upon them. This is the katakismata. Marriage will be consummated in the master bedroom before an altar to the theoi gamelioi, that is, the gods of marriage. Outside, well-wishers sang marriage songs called epithalamia, of which there were two genres, one for the evening and one for the next morning. Sounds like fun. A wedding, however, as anyone who has been married will know, merely marks the beginning of a marriage. If the bride failed to produce heirs, this was reason enough for divorce. This is an alien world indeed. Modern society spends far more resources suppressing fertility, with benefits, of course, to the status of women as free independent agents with control over their own bodies and thus destinies. Our goal here, however,
That's crazy. What if they brought that back? You get married, and within the first 5 years, if your wife can't produce a child, you can divorce her. And you don't have to give her anything, no alimony, none of that. And it better be a healthy child. Otherwise, nope, you get nothing. That would be crazy.
is not to judge, but to understand how does religion intersect with experience, expectations, and society more generally. It's worth noting here that women also played an important role in civic and state ceremonies. In a world where many women were confined to the house, such ceremonies represented an opportunity to leave the home and participate in outside activities, sometimes in the exclusive company of other women, a topic that we will explore in subsequent lectures. For the present, let us turn briefly to other members of the household, and then look at the entire household and the family's responsibilities more generally. In bringing the bride and future mother into the home, we have touched on the end of a daughter's residence. She was born, named, welcomed, loved. Gravestones attest to parental affection. But a daughter was merely a temporary lodger in her father's religion. She eventually left to join another family. She participated in family religious ceremonies, but did not enjoy a substantial role. On the other hand, there were community ceremonies in which she could participate along with her mother. In Aristophanes' Lysistrata, the chorus of women outlined the sorts of religious ceremonies that they participated in as children. When I turned 7, I helped weave a cloak for Athena. When I was 10, I ground grain for Artemis. And taking off my saffron robe, I played bear at the Brabronia. And once upon a time, when I was still a beautiful girl, I carried a basket during the sacred procession, wearing a necklace of dried figs. Girls had roles too, just not the same roles as sons. Sons were born into a family and remained religiously tied to that family. Unlike daughters, a son was entered into the local registry of the phratry, his father's brotherhood or clan, and the father attested to his son's legitimacy. At puberty, somewhere between 12 and 20, the boy was again presented to the phratry, and the father again vouched for the son's paternity. The son then began 2 years of public service called the Via, after which he could be registered as a municipality, as well as in the city registry. From this point, the young man could participate in political assemblies, as well as hold office, and was obligated to perform military service. A man's youth came to an end really only at age 30, after which he was supposed to marry. But even marriage would not release him from his family. The son remained a son, and he could not become head of household until his father died or voluntarily relinquished his paternal authority. The son, moreover, was obligated to care for his parents in their old age, and he inherited the obligation to maintain religious traditions as well as the ancestral cemetery.
That's interesting because somewhere in Bible study they teach that it's been said that children should honor their parents until their dying day. So I'm thinking, what was the exact quote? Where did it exactly originate from? Was it from the Bible, or did somebody just assume it was a good thing because God didn't smite you for taking care of your elderly parents? Or maybe somebody did get smited because they didn't respect their parents. So what y'all think about that? Respecting your parents until their dying day. After everything they do for you, and as irritating as some parents can be, could you still respect them in your adult life? Would you help your parents out until their dying day, or would you be like, hey, if you can walk, you take care of yourself. I'm out. I'm done. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll talk to you later.